Now, Joey's an extreme example of what many of us suffer in our mechanized, dehumanized world. We feel sometimes that, well, we're just cogs in a giant wheel turned by forces beyond our control. And we ask, how can we be human in such a world?
Hi again, everybody. This is Heartbeat, the podcast, featuring insights and teaching from the more than 50 years of work put together by Landon Saunders. On today's episode, we dip back into content that Landon created in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, and have selected 4 excerpts. One on that image we see in the mirror, the story of Joey, and a Xerox copy of today. So let's dive in. Here again is Landon Saunders.
Images, 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 images in a still pond, faces on a wet window pane, a glimpse of a face in the moonlight, the unflattering light of a fluorescent lamp, or the uncompromising image in a mirror flooded with sunlight, a tiny face reflected in the eye of another, or the camera eye that doesn't lie. I'm Landon Saunders, and this is Heartbeat. Narcissus caught a glimpse of himself in a stream and immediately fell in love with himself. He found his image to be such a beautiful one. But for most of us, there's no such fascination or admiration of what we see in a mirror. Do you ever get tired of looking at yourself? Do you feel that some days you'd just rather never look at yourself again? No matter what your hair looks like or whether your tie is straight. Just don't put me in front of something that reflects my image. Now, I've never met you, but I'll bet you could be, or perhaps already are, beautiful. And I'm not just talking to the women now, men, so don't tune me out. We all have the desire to be more attractive physically than we are. There's always something bugging us, something that's not perfect. The person with a large nose wants a smaller one. The girl with the brown eyes wants blue. Or the guy with the blonde hair, well, he's always thought black would be much better. And there are cosmetic ways we can change many things about ourselves, and if not actually change, at least give the illusion of change. A little eye makeup, the eyes come alive. Combed in a different direction, well, nobody will notice the balding area. You know, I've met few people in my life who wouldn't have changed at least one thing about themselves if they'd had anything to do about it. But I promised you that you could be beautiful, and you may be getting a bit impatient with me. Now, it's not a trick to get your money. You don't have to buy a thing, as a matter of fact. But it will take some determination. You know, when I was somewhat younger, I was informed of a most unusual party which girls had from time to time. They called it a lemon party. At this party, there were no refreshments, no planned games, but it could go on for hours and hours, for it was almost certainly not guaranteed to be a totally joyous kind of occasion. Because at this lemon party, the girls would take turns telling each other what was wrong with them. Now, done in a proper way, and with a desire to help and not hurt, there are a few things to recommend such an enterprise. But on the whole, there are probably more people walking around today with lemon on their faces rather than smiles. You know, you don't always end up with lemonade when you start out with lemons. But have you ever met someone that, they just seem to have everything going for them? And not the least being more than his or her share of good looks. Remember how startled and unbelieving you were when one day, right out of the clear blue sky, you heard them confess, I really have very little self-confidence. I find myself so unattractive. Well, we thought, to have half of what you've got would make me happy, and so we began bolstering, pointing out all the good things, and hoping that what he doesn't need will somehow rub off on us. You know what the problem is? It's something we usually call an adolescent image. Just coming into the teens, suddenly it's like the world is exploding. Changes in our friends, our parents become less tolerant, and we begin to see a new image in the mirror. Now we're more critical. Why won't my hair do right? Oh, if I could just have a clear complexion again. I wonder if I could grow a mustache. And so the dilemma goes. Very little satisfies, lots of things irritate. That mirror, which used to be just for combing the hair, has now become an inconquerable foe. Our first real self-conscious image is formed, and for many people, it's the image that remains an entire lifetime. And you know what I'm guessing today? No matter what you look like in the mirror, I'm just guessing that there's something about you that's really attractive, and you may be quite beyond your teens. I've never seen you, And I haven't had any dreams about you, but I just know that there's something in you that really is beautiful. And I guess the problem that you have and the problem that I have is discovering within ourselves what it is that's really beautiful. Have you found something in you that's good and right and like you'd like for it to be? Joey, Joey, Joey. When Joey came to the dining hall, he would first plug his electric cord into the wall socket, and then he would lay the long cord out on the floor, foot by foot, till it reached his chair. And only when he had connected up his digestive tract to a source of power could he sit down at the table, comfortably sure that his stomach would work. Hello, I'm Landon Saunders, and my heartbeat story today revolves around an autistic child. Now that's one who lives in a fantasy world to the exclusion of reality. This particular one was treated by Bruno Bettelman in the Orthogenic School of Chicago. Joey's pantomime with the electric cord was so convincing, reports Dr. Bettelheim, that the other children scrupulously avoided stepping on the imaginary cord. They didn't want to interfere with Joey's digestion. Joey seemed to appreciate their cooperation. But eating wasn't the only vital function that Joey felt needed mechanical aids. Breathing. It needed an elaborate mechanism to continue, and so Joey constructed with cardboard, masking tape, and lengths of plastic tubing such a machine, and connected it up to his bed to keep him alive while he slept. Even the staff of the Children's Mental Hospital respected this construction. Whenever a cleaning woman found a detached piece on the floor, she never threw it away, but rather laid it back on Joey's bed. And the therapists who worked with Joey also respected his constructions, both the cardboard ones and the mental ones. Dr. Bettelheim knew that Joey had turned himself into a machine because, well, he felt that his life as a human being was threatened. The doctor could draw Joey out of his shell only by first going into it with him. Joey's machines were an effort to have some control over his life, for he believed that some invisible machine somewhere had complete control of him. The doctor tried to give Joey more control over his own life by giving him more control over his constructed machines. Some autistic children attack and mutilate their own bodies. Joey sometimes attacked and mutilated his machines, which for him amounted to the same thing. When Joey destroyed the ready-made tubes given him, he had to construct new cardboard ones for himself. This seemed to help him feel that he was controlling his machines and not vice versa. Now, I'm sorry today that I can't report a complete recovery for Joey, though I can say that he improved enough to leave the hospital. Joey's case is remarkable for his energy in acting out his fantasy world, and it's just as remarkable for the energy used by his therapist to lure him gently into the real world. In his family, you see, Joey had known nothing but a cold, withdrawn, mechanical relationship with his parents. In the hospital, in contrast, Joey found for the first time the warmth of human affection. The whirling motion of some of Joey's machines symbolized the circular pattern of his longings and fears. Joey longed to reach out for human warmth, but he feared that all he would find out there in the real world was mechanical coldness. Now, Joey's an extreme example of what many of us suffer in our mechanized, dehumanized world. We feel sometimes that, well, we're just cogs in a giant wheel turned by forces beyond our control. And we ask, how can we be human in such a world? I'm wondering right now what your experience has been, maybe how you deal with it. What is it like to try to be a person in an impersonal world, whether it's a world of business or in the world of the home or a world of the factory or wherever it is? Are there any directions for such a time as these that we now live in? The loud ticking of a clock. You know, sometimes the ticking of a clock vibrates into your inner being, and sometimes it brings back memories of other years, memories that often ricochet off the faded walls of a life that once was yours. Now, the same old places and the same old faces. And sometimes you just sigh because, well, you're even getting tired of that same old air you're breathing. In short, you're bored. And I wonder if your today is simply another Xerox copy of your yesterday. Whether your four walls are iron bars or imposed by circumstance. Whether you're a prisoner of a routine job with the years stretching endlessly ahead of you, or perhaps a young mother isolated from the world and surrounded by small children, one-of-a-kind socks and a diaper pail that runneth over. You know, it's hard to keep the sameness of our everydays from suffocating us, from snuffing out the joys and zest of living. Take the television set. Television supposedly entertains, but you know really it's an exercise in sameness, identical game shows, soap operas, which usually take 2 months to get through one day. It's the same fare, day after day, and really offers very little release for a bored life. And so, what do? You know, maybe 97-year-old, that's right, 97-year-old Edna Troutman, matriarch of 6 generations, maybe she's got part of the answer. She was asked about the happiest period in her life, and she said, "Happy? Well, you know, I don't suppose I was ever hilarious or anything like that. Oh, back in Michigan when I lived with my dad and brother and the farm was doing well, I guess you could say I was happiest then. I was learning all the time, and I was busy from daylight to dark, and they were contented times. I was learning to make bread, make butter, and I learned to make pies and cakes, learned how to sew and make things, and I learned how to raise chickens and how to care for meat. And if the men folks were busy, I'd go to town for them. And when they was gathering up the corn after it had been husked, I'd drive the horses on the double wagon through the cornfields to gather the corn. I never thought about being happy. I was so contented. You know, when you're learning and busy and contented, I guess you'd call that happiness." Now, isn't that refreshing? I mean, here's a person who acknowledges that she's happy, but she's at a bit of loss to explain it. It wasn't something that she'd pursued as a goal. It just kind of came to her as a byproduct of something else. She was curious. She was ever learning. She was involved with life around her and somehow happy. And that's the way it is with the creative person. They learn from everything about them. The artist, for example, he observes his surroundings and soaks in the color, flavor, and feeling of life like a sponge. And the writer also sees life with a greater intensity, and he finds story possibilities in daily, mundane things. But you know something? You don't have to be an artist or a writer to be creative. Very special talents are those things that only you can perform at a given time. And they may range from putting a Band-Aid on a skinned knee, kissing it and making it well, to manufacturing enthusiasm at your place of business. Why, it could mean taking the time to put that cherry on your child's dish of ice cream. And there's another kind of talent that's taking an undeserved chewing out from a superior just because you don't believe in passing the buck. Sometimes just putting one foot in front of the other requires a tremendous talent. The talented person never stops learning. And here's one of the great secrets for release from boredom. You just keep on learning and keep on growing.
Well, it is our hope that we have contributed to the continued learning for you today. If you appreciated today's episode, we invite you to subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're inclined, take the time to leave a comment. It really does help as other people are looking for the same kind of information. This podcast is made possible by Friends of Heartbeat around the world, who invite you to visit the website thisisheartbeat.com for more information about Landon's materials. That's thisisheartbeat.com. And until next time, this is Heartbeat, the podcast.